Okay. Welcome to Megan and the Thunderdome, a Citizen Assembly meeting where we test ideas and hone debate skills in a real-life social political arena with the goal of holistic balance. If you'd like to participate, find out how in our podcast description. So we are going to begin with a round of introductions from our panelists. So I will begin. My name is Megan, and as of right now, I am in San Antonio, Texas, and my primary fields of interest have mainly to do with restoring strong families as the backbone of society, or the authority, so to say, and also nutrition as well as education, more so in terms of deschooling. So now I will ask Stacy if you could please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Stacy Gustafson. I split my time between Northern Michigan and Southwest Texas, and my major focus is holistic community problem solving. I can't wait for this finale, and I'm so happy that we have other meat eaters here. This is very exciting. Thanks, can't wait.
Yes, me too. I'm very excited too. So we'll go over to Ramses next. If you could please introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you, Megan. My name is Ramses. Yeah, I'm joining from Montreal, Quebec, Canada, interested in logic and human rights.
Okay, beautiful. Thanks for being here, Ramses. Dan Bader, would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm coming from Chicago, and my areas of interest are public health, mental health, abrupt climate change, and bioweapons, COVID-19 vaccines.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for being here, Daniel. We'll now go over to primalism, which is Josh, but you let us know what you want to be called.
Yeah, you can just call me Josh. Does my mic sound okay?
Yeah, you sound good.
Okay, cool. So yeah, my name is Josh. I've got a YouTube channel called Primalism where I talk about raw meat. And I just thought I'd come here to share my experience with everybody.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, Josh. And then we have Andres, if you could please introduce yourself.
Hey, so I'm Andres, or you can call me Andy. I currently reside in New Jersey for the time being, but I don't know. Don't really know what else to say.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Thanks for being here. So we'll go over to Daniel Tweet now.
Hey y'all, Daniel Tweet here. KK6VDR is my extra class ham radio call sign here in Thousand Oaks, California, Ventura County. I'm going to be advocating here in Thousand Oaks for the Thousand Earths platform. I'm very devoted to making government pay attention to the long-term success of life. It took us 4 billion years of evolutionary success to get here, and we shouldn't drop the ball. We need to become multiplanetary and make the Earth a world wild web, make it a park so we can reproduce it throughout the cosmos. So we got to quit destroying the Earth. Thanks.
Well said, Daniel. Thank you for being here. We will go to Andrew. Would you please introduce yourself? You can tell us your name, where you're from, and anything else you want to share.
Yeah, hi, I'm Andrew. This is my first time on here. And I live in Virginia, and I'm actually a vegan. My main interest is human nutrition and figuring out the best diet for the human being.
Awesome. Thank you for being here, Andrew. And Cesare, would you please introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. This is Cesare Jurevich from USA, residing somewhere around Chicago, on the outskirts of Chicago. My main interest as a thinker, well, that's ethics and economics, and my main concern as an activist, that's animal liberation and social and economic justice. And did I mention animal liberation?
Yeah, you mentioned it, Cesare. Thank you for being here. Ilya, please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Ilya Dorosh. I'm an engineer, but I'm also interested in biology and human condition and evolution, nutrition as in the context of public health, regenerative agriculture, healthy soil as a store of carbon dioxide. So as an activist, I would hope to bring sustainability to improve and reduce unnecessary suffering and antibiotic resistance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ilya. And Andres, did you have something to add? Because I saw you unmuted for a second.
Yeah, it wasn't really much of an introduction. I'm just starting to get used to it. So it's like I'm not too experienced with any of this. But I guess I have some content, like, well, not much, just a blog called The Original Name Gnosis. And my main interest is in metaphysics, or I think everything comes down to that. Like it ties all things together, whether it's nutrition and lifestyle and everything else in between. So I see everything in a holistic sense. And I would say I am primal, or I adhere to a primal diet, although my diet lately has been like a sort of liquidarian diet, like offerings. So I've been subsisting off of raw milk, eggs, and fruit. But when the opportunity arises, could eat some fresh organ meats. I mean, I'm strictly raw, so it's been a while since I've really had anything cooked.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I go through phases of that too sometimes where I literally just do raw milk and eggs and some other stuff. But great. Okay. So last but not least, Joy. Now, Joy usually does just listen. So, but Joy, if there's anything you want to say, a hello, introduction, go ahead.
I'm here. You're right. I just am mainly here to listen and learn. My interest is law, equality for all men. I have a strong opinion when it comes to not allowing others into our country. I know we need to have limits to things, but my opinion, just because you're born in another country doesn't mean you're not entitled to live the life we live here in the United States. So and I also understand that the United States cannot support everybody. So that's my opinion. And I'm, like I said, all for equality to all mankind. So that's the end of my little speech for today.
Beautifully said, Joy. Thank you for being here today. So we will now go ahead and move into the presentation of the idea. But before, just because we do have a couple of new people here, so we will read the idea, we will take a vote on it, and then we will move into discussion. And then we're going to try to give everybody about 3 minutes. You don't have to talk for 3 minutes if you don't want to. So what will happen is, if you want to say something, you will type hand up in the chat so that I can keep track of who's next. And then we're going to try not to go over 3 minutes. That way everybody has a chance to talk and we can always come back to you. So Andres brought up the primal diet. So if you don't know, the primal diet is basically the raw meat diet. There's some raw plant foods in it, but it's mostly raw meat, raw animal foods. So the founder of it is Augenis van der Planets, and I included a lot of his works in today's discussion because it's the final one. So a little backstory on that. He has a great book called We Want to Live, which I recommend to everybody on this call. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and start screen sharing now and read the idea, but a little bit more about actually Egora. So it's a worldwide stock market of ideas, basically, at egora-ilp.org. And Egora is an online platform where anybody from around the world can turn their ideas into policy to help build a better world. So this idea will end up being in Egora later, but right now it is in a Google Doc. And then once again, this is part of the series, The Raw Meat Diet, the Healthiest Diet on the Planet. So the first time we talked about how meat isn't the problem, plants are. So the toxicity of plants. And then the second week, we talked about bacteria being our friend and how helpful it is. And then today is kind of tying it all in together. Okay, let's begin. Okay. The raw meat diet, the healthiest diet on the planet. Okay. Jeff was in a major car accident. His head went partially through the driver's side of the windshield when his car flew down the ravine and hit a tree. The car spun and jolted him back inside. The car hit another tree and Jeff's head went through the passenger side of the windshield. The car spun and hit the ground at the rear end, jolting him back into the front seat. Finally, the car smashed into another tree on the passenger side. His head went completely through the passenger's door window, and his body was draped over the car door. So obviously, Jeff had serious injuries and he wasn't expected to make it through the night. When he did, the doctors were amazed, but reasoned that there's no way he could make it through the week or even the month. Now, when he did miraculously, they were certain that he'd be paralyzed for life and he'd never be the same again. So why is the question of what are we supposed to eat so difficult to answer? So the mainstream narrative is that we are omnivorous beings. Then we have vegans who believe that we are natural frugivores or herbivores, but few really think about the possibility that we may just be obligate carnivores. So for a fun exercise, I thought we could go into Google and just look up a cow digestive tract. So I'll go ahead, let's do that. So cow digestive tract. And just take a look. Okay. So we can see, all right. So now we'll do another tab, and this time let's do a goat's digestive tract. So you can look at it. And then let's see what else. I probably put sheep in here. No, lamb digestive tract. Okay, sure. Lamb digestive tract. And now notice the similarities between all of those. Okay, so now we've seen these. We see that there are 4 different stomach compartments, okay? So let's look at some other digestive tracts, like maybe a wolf digestive tract. Okay, so we can already see comparing a wolf to a lamb is different. And then let's do a lion digestive tract. Okay, so the lion we can see is also very similar to the wolf because they're both carnivores. And then let's do human digestive tract and see what comes up. So looking at the human digestive tract compared to the other ones we've looked at, think about what does it look the most similar to? And feel free to pull these up on your computer as well so you can look at it for a longer period of time. But that was a little exercise. So notice anything in particular. From a sole intellectual standpoint, and in combination with just using our common senses, we can see that humans have the same digestive tract as wolves, lions, and tigers, a tract that resembles nothing like those of our herbivorous counterparts, who literally have 4 different stomach compartments to ferment and digest plant matter, as we saw. So, okay, we've proven we're not herbivorous beings, but couldn't we be omnivorous? And the science tells us that we evolved from apes who forage on plants and small animals, so we should be similar then, right? Well, at first glance, the proportions of the human digestive system seem very similar to that of other primates, but the actual length of the small intestine in the colon is similar, but it's not equivalent to volume or surface area. The 2 cylinders below have identical lengths, yet their volumes and surface areas are totally different. So you can see the comparison right here as well. Additionally, non-human primates have a microbial fermentation chamber called a cecum in which cellulose is digested. In humans, the cecum has become an almost non-existent vestigial appendix. Furthermore, the colon of primates is over twice as large in volume as that of humans. This is a crucial point because this is where we further break down, or the further breaking down of plant fiber takes place, also with the help of a massive colony of microbes to convert the plant matter into short-chain fatty acids. These fatty acids are the energy source of primates and ruminants. So the sheep that you see and the cows eating the grass, their bodies are in a state of ketosis, meaning they too are burning fat for energy. Now in humans, not only is the cecum absent, but the colon is much smaller, hence our inefficiency at extracting energy and nutrients from plants. Now, last but not least, our small intestines are twice as voluminous as those of primates, which is perfect for digesting meat. The human stomach pH level is around 1.5, which is highly acidic, which is in fact more acidic than most carnivores and only fractionally lower than that of scavenger birds at 1.3. So primates and other herbivores have pH levels of around 4 or higher, which on the logarithmic pH scale is hundreds of times weaker than humans. A strong pH is the mark of a carnivore, which is ideal for breaking down raw meats. Now, the word meat, when broken down, literally means meat eat, and this is no coincidence. I mean, think about it. If you were stranded on an island and the only thing available to you was animal products, you wouldn't only survive, but you would thrive. Now that's being if you ate the entirety of the animal. Of course, you actually could technically live off of raw milk and eggs as well. You wouldn't be as healthy if you had organs and muscle meat, but you could. You do a lot better than if you lived off of plants. Now, this is because whole raw animal foods contain every single nutrient on the planet, and we have the digestive apparatus to extract the proper nutrients from it. So it's important to remember that what you ingest is not always what you digest. So your digestive tract is designed to process very specific foods and only those foods which it was designed for. So we cannot extract all the nutrients from plants, so to say, especially even fiber, even though it's not a nutrient. Fiber is literally indigestible by the human body. So it doesn't matter how much fiber you ingest, you'll never be able to digest it. So plants, as we've discussed before in previous discussions, are the least nutrient dense foods on the planet, literally, because they lack over 15 essential micronutrients. So vitamin D, vitamin B6, vitamin B12, vitamin F, vitamin A, vitamin K2, the amino acids creatine, carnitine, carnosine, taurine, heme iron, CoQ10, cholesterol, and CLA. So the most nutrient dense foods on the planet are animal foods in their raw form. So one of my favorite examples of how humans in nature use animal products to maintain optimal health comes from the writings of a doctor, Weston A. Price, who studied the diet and the lifestyle of the Native Americans in Canada. And he found that, now this was something that a Native chief tribe member told him, that their knowledge of the use of the different organs and tissues of the animals for providing defense against certain affections of the body, which we speak of as degenerative diseases, was surprising. When the Indian kills a moose, he opens it up, and at the back of the moose, just above the kidney, there are, as what he described, 2 small balls in the fat. These, he said, the Indian would take and cut up into as many pieces as there were little and big Indians in the family, and each one would eat his piece. They would also eat the walls of the second stomach, and by eating these parts of the animal, the Indians would keep free from scurvy, which is due to lack of vitamin C. The Indians were getting vitamin C from the adrenal glands and the organs. Now, modern science has very recently discovered that the adrenal glands are the richest sources of vitamin C in all animal or plant tissues. So furthermore, a 20th century Icelandic American Arctic explorer and ethnologist named Vilhjalmur Stephenson wrote of the primitive peoples and that he studied. Now, they also ate heavy animal-based diets of cooked raw and fermented meat, and he said that certain diseases such as dental caries, I'm honestly not going to try to pronounce that, but you can read it, and cancers are so uncommon among primitive peoples as to remain unnoticed. Okay, so back to our initial story. So Jeff, who was in the major car accident, pulled through, not by chance, but by proper nutrition. His father, Agnes van der Planet, who spent the past multiple decades studying how to reverse disease with natural remedies, knew exactly how to bring Jeff back to life with food. So in the beginning, Jeff was in a deep coma. While he was out, his father placed a tablespoon of raw butter and raw unheated honey under his tongue repeatedly. Jeff woke up from the coma that he was expected to die in. Agnes also replaced the toxic medicine the doctors were injecting into Jeff through an IV with a mix of a custard of raw eggs, raw unsalted butter, fresh skinned and seeded papaya, and unheated honey. He fed his son small amounts of raw ground beef and unheated honey throughout the day. Now, Jeff could hardly swallow anything without choking, so Agnes would have to use a vacuum to suction the mucus that was in his throat so he could swallow food and eat and heal. Now, while on the medication and the hospital's recommendations, Jeff's healing slowed down and he experienced many seizures. But once his father got him off of the medication, those things slowly stopped. And slowly but surely, Jeff was on the path to recovery, despite the fact that doctors deemed he'd be a vegetable for the rest of his life. So after the heroic work of saving his son, Agnes got ready to head back home to California because his work was done. His son was okay. And one of his closing remarks to him was, "I'm leaving you 2 6-pound jars of unheated honey and 4 pounds of unsalted raw butter. Remember, they will help you get well, so eat lots of them. The honey helps you digest, utilize, and assimilate nutrients, and the butter will minimize your infection, cleanse dead cells and other waste, and make what you have strong. Raw meat, if you ever eat it, will help your body replace the cells killed as a result of the accident. Eat them together or with whatever you'd like. Just don't cook them or put them in or on food that's hotter than your touch can take. You got it, kid? Yes, sir, he said comically. So Jeff continued eating raw foods and he healed completely. He went on to study electronics and computer technology and he graduated. Now, to this day, Jeff is still normal and has not had a seizure or any complications as a result of the accident. Awanza, who was a former client of Augenis, healed completely from her cancers on the diet. Now, Jill, who was a teenage girl with leukemia, reversed it within 1 year on the raw meat diet. And Augenis himself healed over 2 cancers. Actually, I'm not sure if it was skin cancer. I meant to check that, but definitely bone cancer, the toxic mushroom poisoning, and severe malnutrition with the power of whole raw animal foods. Now, it has been estimated by Augenis that there are over 20,000 people who follow his raw meat heavy primal diet in just North America alone. And these people experience health, happiness, and disease-free living on a daily basis. So I will end with a little excerpt written by Augenis himself, explaining why the raw meat diet is indeed the healthiest diet on the planet. So he said, we are born with a given supply of nutrients in our bodies to facilitate all bodily functions. Enzymes, vitamins, minerals, sugars, fats, and proteins are just some of the known nutrients. As we grow, we require greater quantities of all nutrients. We need to supply this need so that we develop healthfully. Many nutrients are expended during bodily processes. Those nutrients must be replaced. We eat to supply them and maintain or achieve the most efficient bodily functions and optimal health. Enzymes are the catalyst for every metabolic process, from thinking to smiling to healing to cleansing to cellular regeneration. Vitamins, minerals, sugars, fats, proteins, and all other nutrients cannot be digested, assimilated, or utilized properly without a myriad of active enzymes. Raw foods contain a myriad of active enzymes and have plentiful supplies of vitamins and other nutrients. Eating raw foods ensures optimal digestion and functioning and replaces expended nutrients, promoting excellent health. And this is from his book, We Want to Live. All right, that concludes the idea. I will put a link to it in the chat in case anybody would like to go refer to it, because that was a lot of information. So we're going to get ready to move into discussion. But before we do, let's just take a show of hands of who is in general agreement with this idea. You may raise your hand now. Okay, so we have myself, Andres, Josh, and then Dan is at 3/4, and Ramses is at half. And then Stacy is also in agreement, and then Ilya is in agreement. Okay, great. So then I guess we have, okay, Daniel once again still at 40%. Okay, great. And then Cesare and Joy are temporarily abstaining. So let's go ahead and let's move on into discussion. So once again, if you want to talk, just put hand up in the chat and we will call on you. But does anybody want to start us off? Okay, Andres, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think I mean, maybe there is something to the me eat meaning. I mean, maybe it's just a folk etymology or a cute pun, but I mean, it does mean food though. Like in the archaic sense, it was synonymous with food itself, like solid food. So it had that sort of meaning. So it was like synonymous, food, meat, like the same thing. But as for like the optimal diet, I think there ought to be, like, when it comes to meat, I think there ought to be an emphasis on offal, on organ meats, the glands, fat, which is really, at least most of all in the West, has been made super hard to access. Even fresh, like everything has to be frozen. And there's like all these regulations that don't allow us to acquire it, in its totally unadulterated, undenatured form. But I think people also can subsist on dairy and eggs. Like, I mean, there's some that know more details about this than I do, but it's like there are certain tribes that thrived off of raw milk, off of like mare's milk or cow's milk. And, so some of them, it's like that was their exclusive diet, just milk or just dairy products. And they were exceptional. So I think Raw dairy is kind of underrated in general. Like even within a lot of alternative circles, like alternative nutrition, like carnivore, keto, paleo, I think raw dairy isn't really given much of the credit it deserves. Like it's just kind of dismissed as like, oh, it's baby food. It's not really for us to subsist off of, and all these issues and allergies and intolerances that people have. But I find, like, from my own experience as well as that of others, like how regenerative it is to digestion, metabolism, and everything. Like it has all the nutrients. Like it that's why it's called the white blood. Like the blood's supposed to have everything in it. And it's like simultaneously hydrating and satiating.
Yeah,
So-
okay. Yeah, well said. Yeah, that's great about raw dairy too, because dairy is well, the milk is the blood of the animal, and as a carnivore, obviously blood is a top tier food. Most of us have never unfortunately had unfiltered pure red blood. So that's why I also think dairy is such a big part of most diets, because the nutrients in there. Raw milk does have every single nutrient on the planet. And then just to touch too on what Andres said, that yeah, a couple examples of tribes. Well, you have the isolated Swiss who also live mostly off of raw dairy, and then also the Hunza as well. And so it's usually the tribes that don't have access to enough meat that most of their nutrition comes from the raw dairy. So Andrew, go ahead. And also thank you to Ramses for what she put in the chat, that yes, meat does mean food. But anyways, Andrew, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I think the points that you made were very interesting. I've heard a lot of talk from people on both sides, vegan and carnivore, where they go on the diet and they reverse whatever disease they have. So I'm not really sure like what's going on with that, but so I want to talk about diabetes actually, because I think that the practicalities of reversing certain diseases like having diabetes is kind of a pointer to what diet would be the best for humans. So when a lot of people they go on ketogenic diets to reverse type 2 diabetes, and what usually ends up happening is their blood sugar lowers and their insulin and stuff like that, and they seem to be getting better over time, but they're still intolerant to sugar. Like if they add sugar back in or carbs back in, they'll have that insulin spike, so they're still sick. But people who go on plant-based diets tend to actually reverse it, and they're able to tolerate it again. So, and I personally feel my best on a plant-based diet. I'm able to perform better as a runner. I'm able to do better workouts, things like that. I've noticed that back when I ate animal products, it was a lot harder for me to do certain things like push-ups and running and even just basic walking. It's a lot. It's like I'm able to move easier now. That makes sense. Like my circulation is a lot better. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but yeah. I guess that's pretty much what I have to say.
Okay, interesting points, Andrew. I look forward to responding to a couple of those, but Ramses, go ahead.
So I guess everybody knows that I am against alternative medicine, right? And I already represent that before. And that's why my agreement today is only 50%, because the other 50% is just shit. Like, don't tell me that when you inject eggs, right, through mucus or whatever, you are gonna get out of the coma. This nonsense. So let's agree on the basics, guys. Okay, let's agree on the basics. Egg injection does not treat coma. okay? And in my opinion, for example, the talk about the adrenal glands, this sounds very logical, okay? We all know that they are very rich with vitamins and steroids. And perhaps the Aboriginal people discovered that and knew how to use it. This sounds logical and this makes sense. But the guy, Ojonos, right? Ionos, I don't know exactly the name, but he claims that 20,000, right? 20,000 of his of people are following his diet, and that someone has been treated from cancer, right? Which is nonsense. This is something that we don't want, like, you don't need to believe in that, you know, like you can argue for raw meat, but you don't need to inject these anecdotal stories that have no basis in order to prove the point, because this weakens the point instead.
Okay, I understand where you're coming from, Ramses. And yeah, I understand. I expected that using anecdotal experiences that it's hard to prove that they're actually true. However, in the book towards the end, he goes into a lot of science about how disease is caused. And so he really explains how raw foods do revive and help reverse disease. And so it wasn't the egg that woke him up from the coma. He woke up from the coma before, I believe, he was injected with the custard mix. It was actually the nutrients in the raw butter, so the fat soluble vitamins, the life that he was consuming, as well as in the raw unheated honey that gave him enough energy to be able to wake up. So that is more valuable than any other kind of a medicine as well. Now, Ogenus was very much an alternative medicine guy. He didn't really like hospitals. However, yeah, he was mostly healing through natural food. But anyways, that's not the point of it. But on the topic of reversing disease, because Andrew brought that up too, I guess, okay, the second even if you go off the standard American diet into veganism, that's what I had done originally, you will technically get healthier because you're cutting out at least the processed food. But what happens is, especially among vegans, is in the beginning, you do get increase of energy. Although personally, I didn't experience this. I think it's because I've always had extra fat on my body. But usually what happens is you eat your body pretty much. So if you're already skinny, you're going to be eating your body even more. You're going to start to eat your organs and everything. So you're literally eating fat. So that's why you have increased energy. Now, whenever you are eating the natural diet, especially raw foods, you're going to start detoxing because it's the only diet that actually heals, because it is your natural diet. So it's not like you eat everything, you eat raw meat and then all the issues go away forever and you're the healthiest. You're actually going to have to detox a lot of horrible things that have been in your body, whether it's from vaccines as a child, any other things you were injected with. Ogenus, for example, I think he was detoxing penicillin for like 20 years or something. It was still coming up out of him. So all the toxins absorb in you for a while. So that's why you also might have periods of feeling up and down, because your body literally has to reverse disease and you almost have to relive the same symptoms that you experienced to push down. I also have experience with that. And yeah, I guess I would just recommend Ramses to read. So the first part of Ogenus's book, We Want to Live, is anecdotal, but the second part is pretty much only science and facts. And he has a lot of great sources, and reading that would help you understand why he can say things like injecting somebody with the custard can actually reverse cancer, and how the diet does, because he also explains how cancer is started in the first place with the accumulation of toxins. So that's what I have to say on that. Okay, we don't have any hands up in the chat, but okay, Andros, go ahead.
I did write hand up after you.
Oh, I see. I see. You did.
Yeah, so I'm trying to catch my train of thought. So the last thing, okay, so there is some science, some data in the recipe for living without disease as well, like not just like the recipes themselves or the eating regimen. Like you know, I'm a person that's been dealing with type 1 diabetes, which is, you know, the worst one. It's the harder one to reverse or cure. And so the only medication that I've been taking whatsoever is the medical insulin. And you know, it might seem counterintuitive, like what I'm doing now, like I'm just because raw milk it's just, it has milk sugar, it has lactose. Like it's just, I'm having sugar coursing through my veins. You know, same thing with the fruit, same thing with the honey. Like even if it's unheated, but I find myself just improving in general. And like a few months ago, it was like after I got hospitalized because of DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis. You know, I kind of blended, like I was already on the knowledge of primal and all that stuff. Like I already had some prior knowledge, and I was able to like try to nip this in the bud as I was like, well, not nip it in the bud, but recover myself quickly as I'm obsessively doing research online and in books, like physical literature, to try to figure this out, to try to get recover from this illness. And I kind of blended gaps and primal together, and then I went just primal, like really putting it to the test. And then I some time ago was trying to make it keto, like make it super low carb and all that, and plantless. And I found myself dehydrated. Like with the hot summer days, I was like drowning in thin air. You know, I needed to drink a lot of water. And then if I drank enough water, then I started to feel kind of like just this bad feeling in my stomach, which is not the case with raw milk and eggs. And it's like I realized, like, you know, the most of the hydrating foods have carbs in it. I mean, like oyster water or eggs are the exception, but even something like coconut water has some sugars in it. It's present. And I think, to put it simply, like, I don't think it's that complicated. Like my take on how people can reverse or cure certain diseases through like veganism, fruitarian diet, is that like the use of raw plant foods, you know, as medicine or as just subsistence foods, it cleanses the body. And I think it's explained in the literature as well. Like it does cleanse the body and detoxify, but it doesn't regenerate. And I think the animal foods have detoxification capabilities, but they're mainly for regeneration, cellular reproduction, and so forth. So I think plant foods do have its place, but we need to subsist on animal foods. And, you know, if some people have an issue with killing animals and all of that, like I don't really see, you know, like we should beat our chests over doing that out of necessity. But you know, the vegetarians and all, it could actually do well if they would forego the vegetables, forego the plant foods, and as they're doing, and just stick with the dairy and eggs. Honestly, like you have a gallon a day and as many eggs as possible, and you'd be doing a lot better. I mean, I think this, frankly, this thing of like, oh, unlimited vegetables is a joke. Like it's not really getting us anywhere, and people are still getting issues from that. It's just not in our digestive capabilities.
Yeah, I agree. I just put unlimited vegetables equals unlimited problems. Yeah.
And you wanted me to explain gaps more? Would you like me to do that later?
Yeah, actually, yeah, really quickly, just like a quick summary, just so that people can differentiate the difference between gaps and primal.
Yeah, so the person behind GAPS, which stands for either gut and psychology syndrome or gut and physiology syndrome. So it was coined by Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride. And I actually have those two books as well, just as I have Aujana's two books. And, you know, there's a lot of salts, a lot of, well, cooked foods, but, you know, there's a lot of things that they overlap on, where that they have in common in terms of the toxic load and, yeah, the foods themselves, even some raw foods here and there. And then there's a few elements that they fundamentally disagree on. But, you know, a primal, it does put the emphasis on raw foods, especially raw animal foods, raw meat. And I guess it ties everything together. It's like all the research of like the people in the past, you know, like Elmer Stephenson, Price, Pottinger, and so forth. It's like, you know, Aujana's try to bring it all together and, you know, experiment with it and expand on it as best as he can until he left us. And so I think it's up to us to really push that further, make any corrections, any further updates as necessary.
Okay, great. Well said. Thank you, Andres. So Dan Bader, go ahead.
Yeah, so here are some thoughts. And you know, it's clear that most people, if they knew what they were doing, you know, it could be different ideas, but they would want to eat the healthiest diet possible. Everybody's concerned, you know, about their health and well-being. I think it's important to recognize now, it could be that raw meat constitutes a really healthy diet. It could be that other combinations of things maybe are healthy. But you know, last week I said that this is something which could be researched fairly easily. You know, you just have to have experimental design where you would have, you know, one condition or one group would be eating a cooked meat diet. Another condition or group could be raw meat, healthy raw meat. And then another could be, you know, vegan, or you could have different combinations. But if you just, let's say you limited it to cooked meat, raw meat, and then a vegan diet of some kind, which would be specified. So you would have three different conditions. They would consume these diets, and then the dependent variable, what would be measured would be the blood work, you know, micronutrients, etc. And you could look at the results. Now, let's say that there was something definitive that showed up. That would be great. And it could be done. It could be done in lots of different ways. You'd, of course, have to hold a lot of things, you know, kind of constant. There would have to be, you know, in any kind of a design like this, there'd have to be careful controls. But here's the thing. Why isn't that done? Why don't we know? You know, we're talking about it here. And I would just relate, you know, when I worked for the Chicago Department of Public Health, there was this big campaign where they were going to get rid of the junk food vending machines, you know, in all of the buildings, all across the city, actually. And then they were going to replace it supposedly with healthy food. But when they did it with all the, you know, public information campaign and, you know, all of that, they just replaced one set of junk food items with another. And it was just, you know, these potato chips instead of those potato chips. It was a joke. And you know, the thing that we all need to realize is that the rules are with public health is that you do not cross up, you do not challenge, you do not question corporate interests of any kind. And when it comes to food and our health, we're talking about not just big pharma and the medical, you know, interventions. We're also talking about big ag, which basically takes away most of the nutrients, natural nutrients that we used to be able to obtain from foods. We also have big food, and they're just determined to give us as much as empty calories, very addictive stuff. They have scientists who study how to do that. And this is what we're facing. And you know, I know that some people here and you know, part of Egora, the International Logic Party, and you know, a lot of people have political interests, and you know, nothing could be more essential than requiring, you know, public health, which is very corrupt, but to change their ways and actually do the work so that people would have an idea of what it was they were actually consuming, what is best for their health. And anyway, I just wanted to throw that stuff out there. Thank you.
Great point, Stan. Thank you for that. Next up is Cesare.
So, Megan, you are the master of propaganda. I've told you that before. You do amazing work, and manipulating the perception of people. But and I gotta say, you know, that guy that you quote all the time, what is it, a Jew Wonder Planets or whatever? He actually seems like a pretty reasonable dude. And maybe I don't know his stuff. Maybe he becomes much more radicalized once for more of his converts, then he has a much stronger, more intense message. But from the stuff that I saw him talking about, he's just talking about raw food. He's not stressing plants or animal foods. He's just raw. Like that's his main message. It seems he's like very open to, you know, anything from that spectrum, which makes a lot of sense actually. That, you know, I think the reason that people started cooking mostly is to get more calories out of the food. Calorie was the main thing that people were lacking, not the nutrition. So in order to get more calories out of food, to break it down further so it would be more digestible. I think that was the reason why people started cooking. And it makes sense that it denatures things, you know, and it causes a lot of disease. I got to tell you, I'm trying to eat more raw food thanks to you. But by food, I mean plants. So now I'm vegan. I don't expect everyone else to be vegan. Some people aren't capable of that physiologically. Some people are not capable of that psychologically. But the one thing I do expect and the one thing I do demand of everyone is animal liberation. If you want to eat animals, well, that's your animal right. But go hunt them in the wild where they're free and living their natural lives. That's my message. That's my agenda. Actually, yeah, I think we need to turn over a lot more of the lands that we have devastated as the human society, human collective, and actually leave that more to nature. If we were eating more plant-based foods, then we would be able to reduce our ecological footprint by 75%. I'm just ballparking it, but eating animal products is vastly less efficient at consuming the calories and getting, you know, the food that we need than this agricultural. But so this way there would be more wild areas where people, if they wanted to go hunting, you know, they could. Now I might go there and hunt you because I don't really like you exploiting other animals, but I might have better things to do because, well, it's a big, complicated world with a lot of different problems to address. But again, my concern is that people are not actually holding animals captive because there's no such thing as a good slave owner. I don't trust any of them. I just don't want people to have the opportunity to exploit other animals, which includes humans, of course, because humans are animals. And because that does carry over onto the humans. The way we learn to mistreat animals is the way we then go on to mistreat other humans. Because why not? I mean, if you mistreat one, then why not mistreat the other? I mean, it just logically makes sense. Humans are not special. They just have language with which they can deceive themselves about feeling special, but humans are not special. Anyways, that's my point. I yield the floor. Thank you.
Okay, before I go over to Josh, just a couple things to add on. Okay, one, Oceanus does specify raw animal foods over plants. He actually does talk about the toxicity of plants. He also talks about how whole raw vegetables are indigestible. He does, however, consume, or he did, raw vegetable juices, and then he was going to go into herbs and spices, but that never happened. So, but as far as plant foods, he was not an advocate of them, Cesare. So I do recommend reading his book and listening to his lectures and everything, so you get a better idea. But I know you don't have interest too, but also enslaving animals is smart. Enslaving animals is also efficient. Also, you talked about the environmental effects. Regenerative farming literally helps to revive the environment and bring back natural ecosystems at the same time as having lots of food by you. Imagine if you have a property that's 2 acres and you have 1 cow on there that could feed your family for months. That is very calorically efficient. Whereas plants, you'd have to go fields and fields of them to even get enough nutrients. So Yeah, I just wanted to say that. And also, I think that humans are very special. And I think we are special for a reason. We have a wonderful, beautiful, creative mind that does put us above animals. And so enslaving them to our benefit while giving them a great life. I mean, a cow on a farm, that's like a sanctuary for it. It's in heaven. It doesn't have to worry about all the dangers in the wild. So those are just my 2 cents on that. But go ahead, Josh.
Hello, everybody. So I don't really know too much about the science to back up the primal diet. That's never really been my interest. I learned about the primal diet because pretty much all of my life I was super unhealthy and I had a lot of health issues, which I'll talk about. So the first health issue that I struggled with was when I was in the 3rd grade, and I got this random migraine. And little did I know the migraines would last until I was about 18 years old, and I'd get probably 2 every single week, and I couldn't do anything at all. Along with the migraines came really severe cystic acne. And if you've never had cystic acne that didn't go away after you started washing your face or taking antibiotics or something like that, then you don't really know how hopeless you can feel. You don't really think that you'll ever find any sort of a solution to it. And it's a pretty terrible problem because the first thing everybody sees about you is your face. So having all that acne all over your face is a pretty terrible experience, and it creates a lot of things like depression and a lot of other serious health issues. So I started dieting, and I tried the ketogenic diet, but the acne persisted. It still got a little bit better, but the acne persisted. And then I changed over into a carnivorous cooked diet, got a little bit better, but the acne still persisted. And the only way I was ever to achieve full relief from my acne was from eating a raw primal diet. And I know a lot of people don't like the anecdotal examples, but there really isn't a whole lot of evidence to back this sort of thing up. And I think the first reason is because of how censored all of this information is. For example, if you go on the internet and you type in raw primal diet, you're going to find a lot of things that don't have anything to do with the raw primal diet. It's a lot of cooked foods and lots of plant foods, many of which would not be approved by Ogenus, the creator of the actual primal diet. So yeah, I'll just leave it there for now. And yeah, the raw primal diet was the only way that I ever found relief. And there's a lot of people who struggled with serious health issues that couldn't find relief on anything else until they tried the primal diet. And Megan, you brought up Jeff, Ogenus's son. And I think if everybody could read the story about Jeff, they'd be pretty convinced that there's something to this diet. Jeff, he was in a coma after a car accident, and all of the doctors at every step in the way thought that Jeff wasn't going to recover. And slowly and day after day of Ogenus introducing raw animal foods into Jeff's diet, he exceeded the doctor's expectations. And there's a whole lot of very good anecdotes that I think a lot of people would overlook because they think that this science that none of us can actually see or verify, that's coming from all of these funded organizations and laboratories, is more important than the anecdotes. But in reality, the only thing that we can prove is what we actually experience. And after essentially curing myself of cystic acne that I never thought would go away, I'm pretty much convinced that this is the way to do it forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. That was beautifully put. And I agree that the only thing we can really know is what we experience ourselves. So I also am a supporter of anecdotal evidence over whatever science that is out there. Anyways, because a lot of it is just contradictory and you're right, funded by big government and things like that. So yeah, really great testimony. And we will go ahead and move over to Ramses now. After that will be Andres. And then we'll start to move into closing remarks shortly because we're about at the hour mark. Ramses, go ahead.
Yeah, so a quick comment on Dan Bader and on Josh. Well, so your story, Josh, is not actually a single experience. In my opinion, it is not anecdotal because you've got migraines, right? And I think this is highly related to your diet. And of course, we all know that your diet affects your health. Like this is something that we do not argue about. But the fallacy here, that the logical fallacy is that you have some story or some experience of a guy who is going in a coma, okay? And 10 doctors tried 10 different things. And then came that, sorry, what is his name? Ionis?
Yeah, it's some people say it's I say Ojonis, some people say Ojonis.
Ajonis.
Yeah.
Ajonis. Yeah, okay. So Ajonis came in and injected eggs in the guy who was dying, and suddenly the patient came out of the coma. So of course, here there are many variables. Like, how do you know if it is the injection that Ajonis has applied is actually the reason why the guy has come back to life? Maybe it was one of the other variables related to what the doctors have done, or simply the immune system of the guy, or like we have a lot of cases where people come back from the coma and we don't know how, don't know why. And we have a lot of cases where people go in years and years of coma and we try a lot of stuff and they never come back to life, but at the same time, they never die. So let's not mix logic fallacies with science, okay? Science is good. The scientific methodology is good, but the scientists of today are bad. So it is a law. And I don't think that companies corporates have specific agendas. It is not that way. It is not an agenda. It is not a public health agenda that people are trying to enforce. You can never prove that. Like, I challenge you, give me a single evidence for that. It is actually capitalism. So if I am gonna give you some fund for your research, then I'm interested in a specific topic, okay? I'm interested to see or to evaluate specific results, for example. So if someone is doing research in AI, or if there is an agency for AI research, they are gonna fund AI researchers, not quantum mechanics researchers, right? So that's a point here. So because there is no interest or there is no financial gain out of a specific field, there are no researchers available to do that. Especially, for example, in theoretical physics, you find a lot of researchers in Russia, more than North America. Why? Because in Russia, they fund the researchers, as using public financial grants. But here, researchers rely on private grants. So now the point here is, we don't trust scientists. Then what can we do? Simply go to Google Scholar, okay, and try to see all the opinions, read the papers, okay, and judge the methodology. Don't use fallacies, don't use pseudoscience in order to convince yourself. You will find a lot of published research that is not peer-reviewed, however, sounds logical or sounds like you can judge, okay? Finally, what I wanted to say here, guys, use evidence. Like, if you have a logical argument, it has to be based on logical premises and it has to follow logical inference rules. Other than that, I'm not taking it. Other than that, I can claim that there is God and there is Jesus and Jesus was fucked and blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff. And that's it for me.
Okay, yeah, I understand where you're coming from, Ramses. Once again, just reading the story, you would get a better idea. It wasn't just like, oh, he ate food and magically woke up. It really was the vitamins and minerals and the life. I think he was getting life poured into him because that's what raw food is. Also, too, there are documented there that when he did receive a lot of medical intervention and was taking the prescribed medicine, his condition was worsening. He was physically getting sicker and weaker. When he stopped the medicine.
Not necessarily. I remember when I was in the hospital and they started to apply IV, I was shaking very badly. And I asked them, like I was crying, please guys, remove it, I'm shaking. And the nurse was like, don't worry, you're gonna be good soon. and that was it. So I'm not defending specific behaviors. I'm just saying, please don't link two variables together without having a logical inference, that makes sense. Like if A implies B and A happens, then B happens. But if B happens, this doesn't necessarily mean that A happens. Like there's a lot of science there.
Wouldn't it be logical if your body has that reaction that it's toxic? Like if the second something goes into your body and you start to feel like you're shaking, isn't that logical to say, oh, that's toxic, that should not be in me?
Well, I wouldn't judge and say, hey, he was as a guy was sensitive to specific medicines, for example. I don't know what the doctors did apply. Okay? However, linking two variables together, like saying that this is specific injection without this specific injection, the guy was about to die, I think this is a fallacy here. What if you didn't apply that injection and the guy came back to life?
Okay, I do see what you're saying. The last thing I do want to say before we go over to Andres and then wrap up is that the idea that there is an agenda is real, and especially behind corporations. And the way they did it is really subtle. So it's actually, this is real history that's documented. It has to do with, I think if you look up Rockefeller medicine, you'll probably be able to uncover it, although it's bigger than that. But basically what they did in the 1900s is they started to fund certain medical university boards, and they basically would give them money. And so then, because back then the hospitals and everything were very natural healing, actually food-based healing. There wasn't big pharmaceutical companies and everything. That's what the Rockefeller agenda and others wanted. So then they started funding the school boards, and then eventually they said, hey, we're giving you a bunch of money, so can we put one of our people on your board just to make sure the policies are being carried out effectively as we see them? And they said, yeah, sure. Well, then they continued to give them more money. And so with more money came more oversight, more regulation, and more Rockefeller board members on the boards. Actually, there's a document, it's called the activities or something of the General Education Board, founded by Rockefeller in the 1900s, between 1902 and 1914. And you can see all the members. If you look at the members who served on that board and look at the same members in other big corporate organizations, also in colleges, you'll see overlapping names. So they really did have an agenda to transform, and a lot of things do stem back to that. So I just want to drop that. But anyhow, Andres, go ahead.
Okay, so I think there's a kind of a problem I see, or I guess my critique of, even with, okay, in nutrition and the medical sciences and all that, even within the alternative side of things, I think there's just too much theory, like too much emphasis on theory and not enough on results, on actual results. And I'll be honest, I think there's a little bit of that in autogenous research and in the primal diet, or in primal dieters in general, not all of them. And it's like, we got to focus on like what actually works, like practically, like what are the results that people are actually getting. And I think his methodology could have been, it's just too much of an emphasis on this. I think it's foundational to our society right now. There's just too much of this academism, it's academic, like we're just so overeducated and over literate and all these things. I mean, that's like another conversation of itself that we don't have time for right now. But, it's just all this stuff about anecdotal evidence or anecdotes and, all this missiles, and everything has to be in this mindset where, it has to be on paper. It has to be this peer-reviewed study. It's just all these terms thrown around. It's a bunch of nonsense. Like, it's not getting us anywhere. Like, we have to wait for some people in lab coats and suits to like tell us what to believe or tell us what we think is true, and we can't even trust our own direct experiences. Like, I think that's the most direct science, is not this like elaborate type of I don't know, method or what have you. Like, the things are a lot more simple. And it's like we give ourselves over to that we can't even believe our own experience or our own perception. And I know it's like, yeah, so appearances can be deceiving. Not everything on the surface or just like the five senses can be trusted. But I mean, yes, we gotta infer, like use our logic, use reason, and the rational. Sometimes there is this I guess, seeming dichotomy between the empirical and the rational. And I think we need both. Like both have their place. Like we need a synthesis and a balance. And so like with the case with Augenis and his son and all that, like, you know, people can just say whatever they can. It's always just kind of lies, or it's kind of a tall tale, or you know, just overcomplicating it. And it's like maybe it just is what it is. You know, like there's something to like what he was doing, what he was feeding him that got the results. And you know, it's worked for other people. And it's like, you know, we just well, in people in general kind of squabble on about like all the like just the diet, like what is that we have to avoid, or is it that we have to eat. And it's like just do what actually gets the results, and not be so, because then it gets into, I don't want to, I think this term gets misused and abused and thrown around a lot, like dogma. Like it just kind of you know, we're just basing things on meeting a certain like preconceived notion or presupposition or something, rather than like what's actually right there. We can what the actual result is, like, you know, because we talk about proof, we talk about evidence, we talk about like I don't know, it's like we're not, I don't think people are actually consistent with that. And I don't think a lot of the people who, you know, they speak of like uplifting science and logic and reason and all these things, but they're not consistent with their own standards. They're not really consistent with, you know, they're often guilty of like they're walking in what they judge. You know, they're guilty of what they accuse others of. You know, they don't always practice what they preach.
Yeah, definitely well put. I really like what you said about, yeah, the difference between the science that's out there and our personal experience, and how we actually, yes, I think personal experience comes first. There is some value to, of course, science out there, obviously, and merging them together in a healthy way, obviously, is the goal. But anyhow, great discussion, everyone. We will go ahead and move into closing remarks now as we wrap up. So I will ask Dan Bader if you want to start us off with closing remarks.
Sure. And again, as I always say, I really enjoy these discussions. You know, people are open-minded, you know, willing to entertain different points of view. And I find it to be a very, very helpful and kind of enjoyable activity, these discussions. I've just, you know, throw in one thing. I think I may have mentioned it last week, but there's this anthropologist named Marvin Harris. He's deceased now. He was a famous anthropologist from Columbia University. And he had a theory called cultural materialism, which covered many dietary practices and the kind of ideologies or religious beliefs that were built off of these material conditions. And the reason I had mentioned it, I think last week, was because we were talking about cannibalism, and I knew that one of his books had something to do with the cannibal kingdom, the Aztec kingdom. And anyway, but I went ahead and I you know, got one of these books that this was written in, he was writing in the 1970s and 60s and later at later points. But I started reading this book called Cows, Pigs, Wars, and Witches. And I just, the chapter on cows, which is about India, and how, you know, cows were kind of sacred animals in India. When India got their first constitution, I think in 48 or somewhere around there, it was a total crime to kill a cow and then, you know, consume it. And that caused great, and this was a Hindu, you know, kind of a base belief. But in India, you also had a very large Islamic Muslim population. And what a lot of the conflict would come because the Muslims didn't have any problem killing cows and consuming them, but the Indians needed to have the cows as draft animals, to be able to plow their fields. They depended on, kind of an agriculture. They used, the manure as fertilizer, and it was a very delicate thing. So they basically evolved off of that need that you never would kill a cow that would, it could cause a riot. And the thing about that is that, the belief system, he's able to show, again, I would highly recommend this book. He's able to show how the beliefs that the Indians had connects with the material constraints of their survival. And, and also the mechanism of, in order to be able to resist doing something short term, like let's kill a cow and, eat the meat. But of course, if you keep doing that, and it may be satisfying, you're not going to have enough left to go ahead and fertilize, with the manure, your fields and be able to grow food. So there's that dynamic of what is short term seems really great. You have to have the ideological, religious sometimes, belief system that stops you from doing what you may just sort of, impulsively want to do. And I think when it comes to this meat eating issue, and I'm on the same page, I think, with you, Cesare, in terms of this, the animal thing. I do find it, hard to assimilate the, kind of insensitivity to the pain and what gets caused to the animals. On the other hand, I think, depending on what the material circumstances are, it's easy enough to see how, animals can be utilized for food. And so, as far as the health goes, it's kind of an empirical thing. And certainly if I knew that it was essential for me to have a raw meat diet in order to be healthy and get all the nutrients I needed, and I couldn't do that with supplements, and I eat a mixed diet. I eat meat, I eat, and a lot of not raw meat. I did when I was a kid, but not now. I think that should be explained to people. So again, you could make, kind of rational decisions. Sorry for rambling, but I did want to mention that Marvin Harris book. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on Kindle. You can also get a very cheap paperback. It's very worthwhile to read that stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I will get that book. We did talk about it before. I remembered, especially about the cannibal kingdom mentioned. I think that'd be a fascinating read. So thank you. Great points as usual. And Ramses, would you like to share any closing remarks?
Sure. So I'd like to share my experience with protein. One day I was exercising with a friend, and I asked him, I told him that I want to try choking. Okay, like choking me while we are exercising, making me choke while we are exercising. So he did it, and he was strong. So, and I was like, ah. And in the end, I went in a coma. Okay, and I didn't feel anything. I didn't know what happened. But what he did is that instead of coming inside of me, he decided to do it in my mouth, okay? And once the semen was injected in my mucus and then arrived in my stomach, oh my goodness, guys, it was a very different experience. I was like flying. I was like seeing the guy, exercising with me on bed, but I am outside, I am in the ceiling. And then in the end, I woke up and he told me, this is a power of salmon, my friend. And since that day, I take like every day 1 cup of salmon. Okay, you can get it from anyone. Ask your roommates if you cannot collect 1 cup. And it's, oh my God, it's fantastic. And from here, I will draw the induction that applies to all humans, and all of you guys are gonna have this experience. Thank you.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of truth to that, Ramses. So yeah, that's a pure raw animal food right there, and animal products with lots of nutrients. So yeah, great testimony. Thank you, Ramses. Josh, any closing remarks that you'd like to share?
Yes, I would just like to say that, the only reason that everybody who doesn't eat raw meat in here doesn't realize that they should be eating it is simply because you've never done it. I would suggest that everybody here who's never tried raw meat, go get just a small amount of raw grass-fed beef liver, and literally in a matter of 5 minutes after that being in your stomach, it will change the rest of your life forever. Every time I eat, I enjoy the food, but not only that, I literally feel good afterwards. Whereas when I'm eating a big cooked meal, I feel like I could go to bed. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Just try it, and then it might change your entire life forever.
Well said. Yeah, I agree. Such a big difference that you feel eating raw live foods versus cooked foods. Great point. Cesare, would you like to share any closing remarks?
Yeah. So, I'm hearing all these different experiences, because a lot of vegans and plant-based people talk about how much better they feel after they switch to the plant-based diet. I know once I eliminated animal products from my diet, my blood pressure went to normal. I used to always have high blood pressure, all kinds of other health issues actually disappeared. So for me, it's been a positive thing to switch to plant-based. I'm hearing these other stories from other people. Maybe that's physiologically, it's more suitable to them to eat animal products. So it's not like has to be one physiological truth here. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous to try to just keep going back and forth about who's right on things like that. Again, my point is it's about animal liberation. I don't think everyone is, like I said, physiologically and psychologically capable of being vegan. It takes enough, mental fortitude and compassion, intellectual consistency to actually be vegan. Not everyone is capable of that. So I acknowledge that. Some people are just, not capable. So, but the thing is, everyone is capable of letting animals go free. And that is my intent. It's to liberate all animals. Because I just don't trust humans in how they, hold animals captive. It's a slippery slope. It's of abuse. So, yeah, and maybe that's my problem, but I'm sympathetic to their cause. And again, that does get transferred over to how humans treat other humans. I mean, people regularly justify exploitation of humans using the language that they use towards other animals. You're not special. I mean, the only thing that makes you special is your ability to lie to yourself about you being special. Language, that's the distinction. It's the ability for humans to live in a false reality that we construct for ourselves with our own words. So, so yeah, it's the way humans treat other animals is they will treat other humans, because for somebody who doesn't have those boundaries, well, then why not? I mean, it makes no sense to exploit other humans. I mean, it makes no sense not to exploit other humans. The only thing they can do is complain about it, but their words are just words. So anyways, that's my point. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Cesare. Andres, any closing remarks that you'd like to share?
Sure. No, sometimes I just, I have a sense of humor about this stuff, and I sometimes, I don't know, You know, I almost want to say like maybe the highest vibrational diet is like going between like a total dry fasting, basically breatharianism and cannibalism, like, you know, just eating the highest beings, other humans, and then we're just eating spirits. Like that's what a breath means, spirit. It's the same thing. It's from the root like respire, spiritus, pneuma, the same sort of thing. But no, not really though. I think it is a lot more simple and straightforward than we make it out. I mean, there are a lot of complexities, and there is no one size fits all. There is no, you know, it really depends on a lot of different factors: people's blood, their genetics, their heritage or origin, and geography, and like individual, like I don't know. There's just so many factors, but you know, I think there are some simple foundations that just work for mankind. Like, you know, when we gotta observe the like the tribes, like the peoples that actually thrive the most, you know, like observing them, if it's worked for them for thousands of years, like why just throw that all away, or, you know, try to reinvent the wheel or something, you know? And like I said, like animal foods, plant foods have their place. And I don't think, yeah, surely it's not logical to think like every single man has to eat exactly the same way. And I don't really see farming as slavery, and I don't see the slaughter of animals as murder. But in anything, if anything, you know, it's supposed to be freeing to them if they're in their natural habitats and they're, you know, in the best sort of life and the best conditions for themselves. I mean, I don't see how that'd be an enslavement, and this would also be, well, it'd be liberation for them, regeneration for the ecosystem, and you know, the same for us. And you know, I think, I don't know, it could set us free. Like if people went back to just riding horses and getting mare's milk just like that, it's like their own vehicle provides them their food for subsistence. Like how much more self-sufficient, autonomous, sovereign can people get than that? And it's just so much more simple. It's not that much. I mean, it takes work, but it's not that much work. It's not like what we have to do with plants, with a lot of agriculture. And I was gonna say something about, I'm trying to remember. It was like slavery and, well, I would say if like for myself, like if I, you know, they say, you know, would you want to live an excellent life, the best life now, and then get killed off or something like that? I mean, you know, and anything could happen. In some way we could die. And, you know, this is not to sound like, oh, YOLO, you know, hedonistic or anything, but like really, like it just makes sense that, you know, I'd rather live the best life I can that ensures optimal happiness, which I think is the measure of success. And, you know, it's like it's quality over quantity. Quality over quantity as usual. You know, like if our lives are not necessarily 120 years or so, but those years are top quality and we just love life and, you know, aspire to higher values, to higher principles. Yeah, I mean, I don't see that as much of a problem, and I don't see how we can project that onto the animals themselves, and they're gonna die anyways in the wild by, you know, some other creatures, by other predators, and our methods of slaughter or hunting, it's merciful. It's, you know, the reason why we would call it humane is like it's unique to humans, it's unique to mankind. In our method, like we actually want it to be intuitively as quick and painless and merciful as possible. Whereas the animals, they're either apathetic about it, don't really care, you know, no hard feelings, that they're just trying to survive and eat, or some of them might even want to play with their prey and dominate and all those kind of things. Yeah, pardon me, I was just kind of, I guess, rambling or something, but I know we gotta wrap it up.
Yeah, that's okay. Everything is always appreciated. So thank you. Lots of great points. And we'll go over to Ilya, closing remarks, if you have any.
Yeah, I just wrote in the comments that we humans, I mean, we have technology, labs, factories, vertical farms, hydroponics, nuclear energy, that we can make sure that we use resources and have abundance of food, like we did with nitrogen, the process that fixes nitrogen from air, so that we need so much manure now. And that, I think, also the microbiome is also the thing that is a potential to make everyone satiated and healthy, and that produces protein from plant sources. So you kind of can make your own protein, more of it at least. Well, I mean, each human, even though we don't have these like 4 stomachs, we still can make some of those short chain fatty acids. But of course, like external sources of protein just need to be more sustainable and antibiotic free, and known, and to reduce the land usage for soy and grains that are fed to animals. I hope we can work on this. I mean, I don't know, humanity, or maybe some initiatives will arise. And then I use that.
Awesome. Thank you, Ilya. Joy, do you have any closing remarks to share?
I think a lot of it has to do with genetics, what our parents ate, what we eat, what we're born into, and how, if we want to transform our lives to eat something differently, I think it needs to be done gradually. I grew up, I don't think my mother ever served a meal that did not include a green salad that had vegetables in it, lettuce, tomato, and green lettuce, heaven help us, green lettuce, tomatoes, onion, carrots, whatever. We also ate cooked meat too. Now, my mother would take and cut off a piece of steak and pop it in her mouth. She liked her steak barely cooked on the outside and bloody red on the inside. So you could almost say that she was eating raw meat. Her father, on the other hand, he crucified everything. The man lived until he was 89 years old. And what killed him was his doctor gave him the wrong medication, hardened his arteries, and sent him into a coma. So what's best for one person may not be good for another. My grandfather spent 43 years in the Marine Corps. When he got whatever he ate in the Marine Corps, I don't know, but I know that from my first memory, it was raw oatmeal that he cooked in a double boiler every single morning. That man ate his oatmeal when he died 23, 24 years after getting out of the Marine Corps. He weighed within 2 pounds of what he had weighed when he got out of the Marine Corps in the 40s. So, like I said, what's good for some may not be good for others. I personally eat little to no meat. Personal preference, I do eat chicken or turkey. But as I said, I grew up eating meat, cooked meat, but it's not something that my taste buds care for. I prefer chicken or turkey. And there again, I don't even care if I eat any. I'll eat vegetables. I do cook my vegetables depending on what I want to eat. So as far as animals, I feel sorry for animals. I think they ought to be free to live their life, but then you have to turn around and say, what's the balance of nature? You know, I watch African movies and whatnot. What are we doing? Or if we're not killing animals to feed ourselves, the animals are going to be out there overgrown, overpopulated, killing one another. So there again, you have to look at balance of nature, what's right and what isn't. Oh, so I'm done.
Thank you, Joy, for joining us tonight and for your insight. Stacy, any closing remarks?
Yeah, I want to say I agreed with an awful lot of what Joy was saying. You're a very wise woman. Thank you for joining us. And what an awesome group tonight. I really enjoyed this. And thank you so much to the people who had input on the subject experience. I so appreciate that. And I would love to see all of you guys back here. It was a great discussion. Thank you very much.
It was. Thank you, Stacy. And then last but not least, Andrew, any closing remarks?
Yeah, so I think that veganism is the best diet for the human being, and there can be certain genetics a person can have where they can't convert all of the nutrients, so they can run into some issues. But I think that probably the smartest thing to do and the healthiest thing to do would be to eat like eggs or something from backyard chickens, or maybe some dairy. Not conventional dairy though, like maybe some dairy from a local farm or something. And yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, thank you for your insight as well, Andrew. And yeah, thanks to everybody for joining us today. Thanks to Joss, Andres, and Andrew for coming as guests and for sharing your experiences. And of course, thanks Ramses, Ilya, Cesare, Stacy, Joy, both Dans who were here for coming. Yeah, we'll go ahead and take another vote of who is in agreement with the idea that was discussed. Just show of hands.
Well, what's the idea? What are we voting on?
We're voting on agreement for the idea that was presented in the beginning.
Which is what again?
The thing that I read, the raw meat diet, the healthiest diet on the planet, the Google Doc.
Oh, well, yeah, but I would also emphasize the raw dairy products as well.
Yes. Okay.
I think raw milk and raw meat is an essential duo.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, okay. So the initial vote stayed pretty much the same. And okay. So this idea is not yet in Egora yet, so nobody is supporting it. And for our viewers and listeners, if you'd like this idea, don't forget to support it in egora-ilp.org. In Egora, you will also find information for our upcoming meetings. And then last but not least, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/Citizen Assembly.